Squadron of the South African Air Force, better known as the Flying Cheetahs, celebrated their 50th anniversary on the 1st of October 1990. 50 years of a proud and historic past, always honouring the squadron motto, upwards and onwards. In 1939, Nazi Germany became a threat to world peace, and Hitler launched a blitzkrieg on Poland, causing the world to react with a declaration of war. In September 1939, 3 days after Britain and France, the South African government announced that the Union was at war with Germany. With this, the country was thrown into full preparation for the conflict. This also meant preparation for the South African Air Force, and the training of pilots started in all earnest for the long struggle which became known as World War II. On the 13th of May 1940, Major N.G. Niblock Stewart, with 19 pilots and 24 ground crew, left Air Force Base Waterkloof for Cairo. By June the 1st, they began training on gauntlets. Another group under Lieutenant S. van Breda Tron received training on Hurricanes and Furies at Air Force Base Waterkloof and left on the 22nd of May for Kenya. The last group left on 26 May by boat for Mombasa. These groups, as part of one squadron, formed the foundation which was to become two squadrons. It was in Kenya that the squadron received 2 cheetah cubs as mascots, and the historic name Flying Cheetahs evolved. On the 1st of October 1940, sea flight of one squadron officially became 2 squadron, manning a base at Nanyuki and the base at Archer's Post. The squadron formed part of No. 1 Bomber Brigade and carried out escorts, patrols and offensive recce operations in the East African Campaign. On April the 20th, 1941, part of the squadron left via Durban for the Middle East. During this campaign, the squadron confirmed 8 Italian aircraft shot down, while only 1 squadron aircraft was lost and 2 pilots taken prisoner of war. The rest of the squadron left Durban Harbour on May the 2nd for the Middle East and was based at Amria. Equipped with Hurricanes and later American Tomahawks, they flew shipping escorts and patrols with 258 wing of the Desert Air Force. In December 1941, 10 2-squadron Tomahawks engaged more than 30 Stukas, which were under cover of 20 Macchi 200s and Fiat A50s. 6 enemy aircraft were confirmed shot down against the loss of only 2 squadron pilots. When the Germans attacked the Gaza line, the Tomahawks were replaced by Kitty Hawks, which led to greater losses against the well-known Messerschmitt and Macchis. July 1942 saw 7 German aircraft destroyed, 3 possibly destroyed and 3 damaged. El Alamein was one of the biggest battles during the Desert War, and the counterattack was launched in October 1942. Until November, 2 squadrons flying as fighter bombers claimed 26 aircraft destroyed and 12 damaged. The North African campaign ended in May 1943. August 1943, and the squadron moves to Sicily and later Italy, flying Spitfire Mark V bombers. In October 1943, they turned to close support operations in support of the 8th Army. The squadron also flew to Banja Luka in Yugoslavia in April 1944, claiming 40 aircraft and damaging 6. 2 squadrons flew Spitfire Mark IX aircraft until the capitulation of Germany in 1945. On the completion of World War II, the squadron was disbanded and re-established at Air Force Base Waterkloof in June 1946, using Spitfire Mark IXs. In 1950, the South African Air Force obtained Vampire aircraft. 2 Squadron was busy converting to the new jet when the South African government announced that a squadron of the South African Air Force would be placed at the disposal of the United Nations for service in the Korean War.
Once again, as before in the history of South Africa, you have to say goodbye to your loved ones, and once again, they will have to make sacrifices.
On September the 26th, 1950, 49 pilots and 157 ground crew of 2 Squadron boarded the Cheetahs and sailed for Yokohama, Japan, for training. Equipped with F-51 Mustang fighters, the squadron moved to Korea and operated with the 18th Fighter Bomber Wing of the US Air Force. The squadron first flew on 19th of November 1950 from Pusan, then moved to Pyongyang, Samor, and base K-10. The Mustang proved to be an excellent fighter, able to carry machine guns, bombs, rockets and napalm, and was used in attacking enemy convoys and ground forces. The South African ground crew received great respect from their American allies for their motivation and commitment to the squadron and its ultimate victory. Life in the camp was far better than that of the Second World War, especially when the men of 2 Squadron could relax at Walks Inn, which became a famous institution and popular venue during this time. A healthy camaraderie existed between the South Africans and the Americans, which made K-10 a homely place to spend the time away from home. Between the sorties, there was time to wash the Mustangs, do all personal chores, and just relaxing with mates. But it was still war, and they kept hitting the enemy with ruthless precision in sortie after sortie. The pilots were attacked on several occasions by the vastly superior Russian MiG-15s, yet only one F-51 Mustang was lost. During an attack on a MiG-15, Lieutenant Enslin saw an explosion in the aircraft. His gun-sight camera recorded the attack and the damage. This was to be the first enemy aircraft damaged by a Mustang in Korea. During their service time in Korea, the pilots of 2 Squadron was relieved after 75 sorties. Here, Lieutenant Austin returns after his 75 sorties. Lieutenant McClear completed 98 sorties. And Commandant Berger here receives the 2 Squadron Laurel Wreath for his 75 sorties. In the Union, pilots were still trained on the Vampire aircraft, getting ready to be sent to Korea as replacements for those whose tour of duty was completed. After a request made by 2 Squadron for the upgrading of their aircraft, the North American F-86 Sabre fighter jet was received on the 31st of December 1952, putting the South Africans on par with their American allies. The aircraft was the first supersonic jet flown by a South African squadron. Here, after receiving the traditional beer for his 100th sortie, Captain Ed Pienaar is congratulated by the squadron and wing commanders. During their service in Korea, 2 Squadron have been continually employed in operations comprising mainly armed reconnaissance, interdiction and close support of land forces. On the 27th of July 1953, the Korean War came to an end. During this war, 2 Squadron's Mustangs completed a total of 10,373 sorties, and the Sabres 2,032, comprising inconsiderable damage to enemy installations. The squadron was also credited for cutting the permanent rail supply lines in 472 places. They received high acclaims during this time, and this photograph, specially autographed by Madeline Monroe. They also received presidential unit citations from Korea and the United States of America. In appreciation for the effort by the South Africans, the officer commanding 18th Fighter Bomber Wing issued a policy directive stating, "In memory of our gallant South African comrades, it's hereby established as a new policy that all retreat ceremonies held by this wing, the playing of our national anthem shall be preceded by playing the introductory bars of the South African national anthem, Die Stem van Suid-Afrika. All personnel of this wing will render the same honors to this anthem as our own." To those who served, this memorial, erected at the United Nations War Allies Cemetery in Pyeongtaek, Korea, pays homage especially to the 34 pilots and 1 ground crew killed or missing in action. Korea was truly a remarkable milestone in the history of the SAAF and 2 Squadron in particular. Squadron was reformed at Air Force Base Swartkop in 1953 and had an inventory of 10 de Havilland Vampire aircraft and a few North American Harvards. The South African Air Force acquired the North American F-86 Sabre, the first supersonic aircraft in service of the Air Force. 2 Squadron was transferred to Air Force Base Waterkloof and again converted to Sabre aircraft. At this stage, the squadron had 8 Sabres, 6 Vampires and 6 Harvards. Another 8 Sabres, received later, brought the strength to 28 aircraft. The Cheetah Cub, received from a Northern Transvaal farmer in 1952, sits proudly in the Sabre air intake, reinstating that 2 Squadron was indeed the Flying Cheetahs. April 1963, another highlight in the squadron's history with the arrival of the first Mirage 3 CZs from France. The aircraft was assembled and test-flown by a French team, but in May 1963, Major Melville SM, OC of 2 Squadron, became the first South African pilot who went supersonic low level. It was in November 1964 that the first Mirage 3BZ arrived at the squadron. This 8mm film features the Mirage 3EZs, which arrived during July 1965, relieving the load of some of the flying duties. Then came the D2Z, the dual for the EZ, and in 1974, the Mirage 3 R2Z made its appearance at Waterkloof. The Mirage proved to be a very reliable aircraft in all aspects. The Cheetah and the Mirage 3, a combination difficult to beat. Once again, the squadron was on the move. In December 1978, 2 Squadron officially took leave of Air Force Base Waterkloof and moved to Air Force Base Hoedspruit. '78 also saw the Flying Cheetahs actively involved in the Southwest African campaign. In May of that year, they took part in Ops Reindeer, March 1979, Ops Rekstock, and August 1981, Ops Protea. The squadron was responsible for eliminating strategic enemy targets like radar installations and anti-aircraft batteries. Apart from these operations, the recce flight was deployed regularly for tactical photo reconnaissance. 2 Squadron also participated in Defence Force exercises Quicksilver in June 1978 and Thunder Chariot in September 1984. Whether it's technical, supply, administrative personnel or ground crew, this is teamwork at its best, ensuring the serviceability of all aircraft and to keep the squadron operational at all times. This commitment by all its members guarantees that 2 Squadron can to date boast with an excellent safety record. With this kind of support behind them, the pilots of 2 Squadron can confidently perform the duties of interception, ground attack and reconnaissance in the Mirage 3BZ, CZ and RZ aircraft currently on their strength. The following sequence demonstrates clearly the operational readiness of the squadron. It took only 35 seconds for this aircraft from engine start to tarmac, ready for taxi and takeoff. The following aircraft were flown by 2 Squadron during the past 50 years. The Hawker Fury, the Hawker Hurricane, the Tomahawk, the Curtiss Kitty Hawk, the Supermarine Spitfire, the F-51 Mustang, the de Havilland Vampire, the North American F-86 Sabre, the Dassault Mirage 3. With an honourable past such as this, it is with pride and fond memories of what has passed that the Flying Cheetahs say goodbye to the Mirage 3. Their last official flight was flown by Major Inar on Friday the 5th of November 1990 in a specially painted Mirage 3 CZ.